This is Election 2015.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to the Thursday edition of The Chair here on STV Real TV. This is a night of firsts because it's our first Thursday edition of the program. We've been doing the show usually on a Tuesday night, but as the election pace picks up, we've decided to expand the presentation and include a second night. And this night, it's the first night that we've got our very first PNM candidate on the inside on the chair. So I know it's going to be a very interesting program, no doubt. Our usual suspects are present, the panel of what I call diverse young persons from different parts, different groups, different positions and thinkings as far as the political run of things are concerned, and they're all here ready and willing to go. And our very special guest tonight is a man who's definitely making a lot of waves as far as the local election is concerned, standing out loud and proud as one of the candidates vying for validation by the electorate here in Trinidad and Tobago. He's a former attorney and very outspoken. I also only found out that he's a professional athlete. And that's something I have to find out some more about maybe sometime soon. Ladies and gentlemen, very special guest in the chair tonight. Let's welcome Mr. Stuart Young. Good evening, Mr. Young.
Thank you very much. And thank you all so much for inviting me to be here tonight. I just want to correct Obi, if I may call him Obi. I am still an attorney at law. I'm not a former attorney at law.
Well, I
may not be practicing as much as I would usually be practicing, but I've thrown my hat in the ring in the political arena of Trinidad and Tobago in electoral politics. I am the PNM candidate as of Monday this week. Went through the nomination process with the EBC. I am the PNM candidate for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, and happy to present myself to the Youth Forum, as I understand it, because the youth are big on my agenda going forward. So thank you all very much for inviting me here tonight.
Well, I know you haven't, you probably haven't had a chance to look at the program before.
I haven't. Every night is a meeting.
My job is really simple. While I hold the title of moderator, I simply introduce the show, cue to the commercial breaks, and stand by as a level of authority and control should the conversation get out of hand. But it's really a direct conversation with young people who are, in some cases, first-time voters, who all have different opinions and would like to speak to people who are actually going into that pool and vying for that position to see what they bring to the table.
Well, it's a great opportunity and a privilege to be here.
Okay, so, well then,
over to you all.
Let's let the conversation begin, panel. Mr. Stuart Young, the chair of STV Real TV. Let's go.
Good night, sir. My name is Edward Young. I'm representing Take Back TT tonight. I wanted to ask, during your time as a temporary senator, have you ever filed a declaration under Section 11 of the Integrity and Public Life Act?
I am obliged to file my declarations, and I am in the process of preparing them. It is a, I wouldn't say a cumbersome process, but it is a very time-consuming process and one that you want to get correct and make sure. So I have a lot of third-party verification exercises to do. I actually was a former counsel, attorney for the Integrity Commission and helped them in the development of their processes, etc. And it requires, on my part, a lot of third-party verification because you want to ask, for example, the banks and the insurance companies to please provide me with written statements of what it stood at certain points in time. And that is a process that's outside of my control.
What you're saying then is that you're relying on subsection 2 of Section 11, which says that the Commission may, in particular case, in any case rather, for good cause, extend the time of furnishing of a declaration for a further period not exceeding 12 months.
Correct.
All right, fantastic. And the second question I wanted to ask was, what's your opinion on the rumors of Trinidad and Tobago devolving into an oligarchy, given the number of business persons who are currently running for office on many of the political parties' slates, and they're being funded by prominent business families and families that are well-to-do?
Okay, well, first of all, I don't necessarily understand the connection with an oligarchy, and also why you would say there's funding from these families, etc. But from my point of view, I think it's a positive thing. I think the representation of Trinidad and Tobago should be diverse. I am personally happy to see people coming forward who have contributed in various ways to society and being able to throw their hats, their personal hats in the ring. I don't think there's any entitlement of any one sector of society or any one class of people to represent Trinidad and Tobago. So I think the broader the representation, it could only be better because it brings to the table of representation different views to go into that pot of what will then be the formulation of policy for the governance of Trinidad and Tobago.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Brandon O'Brien, also from Take Back TT. As you can see, I have your
I saw
manifesto
a
in
number of
hand.
manifestos circulating. I'm sure you all have read it.
We were fortunate
more
enough
detailed than I
to
have.
not only witness the launch, but read it in depth. And we noticed that under gender affairs, it is a bit meager, which shocked me because it
You want to tell me what page?
I believe that is page 69, where it heavily just points back to the 2002, stating that it's going to be guided by the 2009 draft gender policy, which stated affirmatively in the gender policy not to have any policy regarding protection from discrimination for LGBT persons. But when Dr. Rowley was questioned on the matter at the event, he used the same, we need to have a national conversation rhetoric that the manifesto itself would refer to as empty talk, dithering, and procrastination in reference to the PP's lack of a gender policy. So I'm asking, what then can we trust the PNM to actively do and not say in order to provide protection for LGBT constituents of Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, first of all, as you would recognize, the government for the last 5 years has not been a PNM government. So that was the reference to what has happened in the last 5-year period, where we were not the ones who were controlling the national conversation. Mm-hmm. We have come out very strongly as a policy decision that we must have consultation on matters that affect individual and citizens' lives. We're not going to be dictating, they're not going to be edicts handed down. We have learned from errors of the past, and there's going to be consultation on certain things. Allow me to finish. Mm-hmm. And this is certainly a big conversation that needs to take place. And it is certainly something that we have said that is on the agenda. When the leader comes out at the launch of the manifesto and goes on record as saying there is going to be consultation on it, I think you can take him on his word, and he is being surrounded by people who certainly are willing and ready to begin that consultation process.
The question that I have therefore is, like, should LGBT constituents have to wait for a conversation to decide whether or not they should be protected from discrimination in the workplace, in schools, in families, as opposed to actually getting action from the government that they voted to power? There is actually
legislation in place in Trinidad and Tobago that currently provides protection against discrimination.
If we're referring to the Equal Opportunity Act, it states that sex doesn't include sexual orientation.
Right. But the question becomes, what is the discrimination? These are things that need to be brought forward. I agree with you. It is a conversation that has to take place. There are many national conversations that have to take place. We are not prepared at this stage to make any edict with it whatsoever, but rather to have open ears and engage in that consultation process. And that is a commitment that has been given by the leader. In the meantime, what we are on record as saying is we respect the Constitution. We have always respected the Constitution. One of the pillars of the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago is equality. And I think that is a signal of how the thinking will be about equality.
Hi, Mr. Good evening.
Hi.
Dominique Williams.
Hi, Dominic.
Having read the PNM's manifesto this evening, it is, in my opinion, a very ambitious one for a party that has not been in government for the last 5 years. You all, I would think, do not have a full overview of what you're going to meet there. So how do you feel about the fact of being able to fully execute what you all have put into that manifesto? And if you cannot get everything done, what are your #1 priorities as a party?
Well, first of all, the good news about the PNM is not the first time we're going into government. Come September 8, we would have formed the government for the first period for 30 years of the history of Trinidad and Tobago. The last period up to 2010, it was almost 10 years. So we are very accustomed as a party of forming the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We have very experienced persons at the helm in Dr. Rowley, Colum Imbert, Marlene MacDonald. Those are three of the only 3 returning incumbents in addition, to Terry Dial Singh. So we are people who are accustomed being in government. We have recognized in front. We've spent our 5 years as opposition as identifying the various areas that need focus. And to say what we're prioritizing, the immediate priority would be to focus on the national budget, because everyone will recognize the budget has to be produced by October, so it gives us less than a month. And exactly what you just alluded to, we are going into a bit of an unknown where we have to make very quick assessments of what exists. We have good reason to believe that what we're being told exists does not really exist. And our immediate priority would be a national budget, whilst doing an assessment of what exists and what needs to be done to return the country to a level of stability.
Mr. Young, good night. Renako Williams, representing the PNM National Youth League. You hear me good, right?
I am.
Right. The PNM has been talking a lot about local government reform. All right, and the thing is, a lot of youths are scared that they might lose their jobs. So we within the PNM know that it will create more jobs. So can you just elaborate a bit on the local government reform and what the benefits
local government reform is a big part of our agenda. I've been working in my constituency, which includes East Port of Spain up to Laventil, Movar, the whole of Belmont, as part of my constituency since October last year. And from the time I hit the ground, the only way for us to effectively execute change that is going to affect the quality of life of people on the ground is through local government reform. Because what you're now doing is you're putting the councillors and the people in the municipal corporation in charge of their own areas. And there's not a central government ministry dictating how much money they get. It's akin to the THA, where you get an annual budget that's set out, but also factored into that, you're going to have the collection of taxes in your areas, etc., to fund and other ways to fund it. So therefore, what you're providing is the people who govern on the ground, i.e. the councillors, as opposed to a government minister sitting in a ministry who is hundreds of miles away from the affected area making decisions. You're giving the people on the ground who govern that area more responsibility and the resources to be able to do it. There is not going to be a reduction of jobs. The only reduction of jobs are going to be, for example, a PS who existed before in the Ministry of Local Government. And all of the rest of the resources are just going to be put down into the municipal corporations. Those in the public service will now be, as happens all of the time. With this government, you had an expansion of the number of ministries, so it meant a shifting of resources, etc., then supplemented with contract workers. When we're contracting it, what it means is now a reallocation of resources, but it does not mean, as is being suggested, a loss of jobs, especially at the municipal corporation. I'll give you an example. One of the ways we hope to effect positive change on crime as well is through the existing legislation. With municipal corporations, they're allowed to have a police strength, right? Police strength in each corporation. We're mandating that each one immediately goes up to a strength of 100. And that now we hope will introduce a level of community policing. We're going to have proper training, for example, for them to know how to deal with abuse situations, child abuse, abuse of women, etc. And try and sensitize this local police force in a municipality to be able to deal. It'll be akin to in the old days of police walking the beat in a community and them knowing all of us in our own communities as opposed to a central police division. So that as well is an immediate introduction of new employment into the municipal corporations through local government reform.
Good night, Mr. Young. Richard Jagger here. As we're on the topic of legislative change, I'd like to ask, what's the PNM's position going into office with regards to proportional representation? That's one. Two, again on the legal front, Razia Ahmed, former president of the Senate, is currently vying for a seat San Fernando West on the UNC ticket. AG Gavin Nicholas, same thing, Diego Martin. What is the legal ramifications in terms of these holders of office in the country running for political office in a time where technically everybody has filed nominations, so technically we have no government until September the 8th, the day after election. So then those are the two questions.
Proportional representation, as you all know, is a completely different type of representative politics. There's merit and there are pros and cons in every type of form of governance. It has been introduced at the local local government level. It is now part of the legislation. We've gone through one local government election, the 2013 election, where it has been utilized. It is again something that for us to change, you would require a certain constitutional majority. So it is again something that we will have to open up for consultation, because that is something that's going to affect the lives of the voters and of the people. And I don't personally think it's for government to decide that. I think we have to throw it out there. It may or it may not be the best mode of representative politics for Trinidad and Tobago, but we have to open our ears through a consultation process and hear what the people have to say, and through conversation. With respect to the second question that you asked, Razia Ali, Miss Razia Ali, who was the former president of the Senate. We've now been told she has resigned. That was the correct thing to do before filing your nomination process papers. We do have a government in place. The Constitution provides that until the swearing in of a new government, the office holders who hold ministerial posts continue until the day of election. So we're not in any constitutional crisis. The Attorney General is still allowed to be the Attorney General and put himself up for electoral politics. I think what it shows us is we have a lame duck period. And I think this is one of the areas we need to give consideration to in the future, because for the first time we've had a 12-week declared election period, whereas normally it's a 6-week election period. And being a participant in that process, I can tell you it is far from ideal, because during that period, the government is not supervised by a parliament. Parliament plays a very important role in the supervision of any government, and that is certainly one of the issues we intend to address. But there's no constitutional crisis. The government continues to run the country, albeit in less than ideal circumstances, which really is an indication that we should not really have such a long declared election period. And it is something that we are going to be looking at in the next 5 years.
Good night. My name is Matthew.
Hi,
I saw in the manifesto that you all intend to decrease the taxes to 12.5%. How do you intend... To
decrease?
Yeah, from 15%.
Correct. Decrease VAT to 12.5%, yes.
All right. How do you intend to... because I know a lot of all the governments after NER enjoy the 15% on various items and stuff. How do you intend to sustain certain sectors of the country and the government with a decrease in oil price?
Right. So in other words, your question is based on a decrease in revenue. And you're saying with the decrease in revenue, 60% of our economy is based on oil and gas revenue. And where we've had a decrease in the price and now we're reducing the VAT by 2.5%, you think that automatically also leads to a decrease in revenue. And therefore, you know, what is the policy behind it? Part of the policy behind it, and history has shown that when you actually have a reduction in tax rates, the level of collection and the level of people who are doing what they're supposed to do actually goes up. So as was given in the manifesto launched this morning by Mr. Imbert, the example of when he came in 79, which is way before our time, it was a 60% income tax bracket, and now we all know the maximum is 25%. The philosophy behind it is, one, to ease up with a drop in overall revenue in the economy, is to ease up the people on the ground. Is all of us as citizens to make our dollar stretch a little bit more by giving us a little bit more buying and purchasing power with our dollar. But we do not, and we've studied it, expect a drastic reduction, if any, in the revenue stream from VAT. Right now, we recognize that there is a bit of a problem with the collection of VAT. People who are VAT registered don't necessarily do what they're supposed to do and push it back into the system as they're supposed to do.
But how do you tend to collect these revenues that people have VAT outstanding?
You would have also have seen in the manifesto that we are going to be pushing the enforcement and the collection of tax and the tax revenue base, because we recognize that, well, I mean, the law should be enforced. That's the first principle. PNM is going to be pushing very hard the proper enforcement of the laws that currently exist. But also we are going to provide the resources to the authorities to try and effect a more efficient tax revenue collection system.
Good night, Mr. Young.
Hi, good night.
I have a two-part question, so it's a bit long. So according
Give me the first part first. It's been a long, long week. Give me the first part, I'll answer that, and then hit me with the second.
No problem. So according to the Representation Act, Chapter 2, Section 48, no sum shall be paid and no expenses shall be incurred by a candidate at an election or by its election agent, whether before, during, or after an election, on the account of or in respect of their conduct or management of the election in excess of the amount of 50,000 in the case of parliamentary section. Now, my question here is, with the advertisement that we have around the savannah, with you and Mr. Rowley, Dr. Rowley, there's a sources state that the drapes should cost about 70,000 to print and about 40,000 a month in rentals. Now, my question is, what's your thought on that?
Well, it's not a matter of what's my thought on that. As you call it, is an advertisement. It is actually a national billboard. That is a normal thing. You open the newspapers every day, you see 5 full-page ads of the Prime Minister talking all about Kamala, etc. I can guarantee you each one of those ads costs more than $10,000. But there has been a complete abiding with the law. One of the key phrases in what you just said is a candidate. People only became a candidate as of Monday of this week. And so you're assuming that it is me or my election agent paying for that. That is not so, right? There is a national party called the People's National Movement that takes decisions about the expenditure of party money that is outside of the candidacy. So I can guarantee you I'm not running afoul of any law whatsoever. That's the first part.
Yeah, that's the first part. Well, the second part is not only with People's National Movement, but People's Partnership as well. Is all these advertisements necessary? Shouldn't the actions of the politicians speak for themselves in advertisements, not actually selling, whether it's phone calls by the People Partnership as well or anything like that?
I am so happy. I am so happy that you've raised that point, because my personal philosophy is exactly that. And I am always happy to address a youth forum because I use you all as the example. The youth of today, you all are all thinking people. Before we went on air, every single one of you all were on a smartphone. Reading things, surfing the net. One person was asking me, referring to a newspaper article of me on the net. I assume you were Googling me to see other things. The point is, we are now a thinking people, and that's something to be promoted. My personal answer to that is no. If you look at my personal campaign, I have one of the least amounts of expenditure, my campaign team, on those types of things, because I prefer to be on the ground as I've been doing, walking, meeting people, holding myself available to have these types of discussions and conversations, to start an empowerment exercise and a different level of transparency. So it's actually you, the voters, who have to decide that, and you all are the ones with the strength and the power to tell the politicians, that doesn't change me, that doesn't make a difference in my life, that actually irritates me with all of the phone calls or whatever else it is, and I want to hear from you, the politicians. Come and sit in the hot seat, engage me in conversation, hold yourself accountable to that different level of transparency, which is what I personally do every single night. I've just come from a meeting where I've done exactly this. Every single night this week, I've done this, and I make myself available to continue doing it, because it's only through conversation like this, I think, we begin to change the way politics are, and the sticking of posters or the full-page ads, etc. You, the electorate and the voters, need to send the signals as to whether that really makes sense and makes a difference or not. That's your power.
As you say, conversations, I think that's the cue for us to take our first commercial break. And before we go to the break, I must say that this is the first time since we've been having the program that we're actually having a conversation.
Good. I like to be a trendsetter. I don't know what that means, but I like that.
At the risk of sounding biased, I mean, we still got quite a few more episodes to go, so we'll see how it goes. But we take a break, we come back with more of Mr. Stuart Young and the panel. This is The Chair on STV Real TV. We'll be right back after this.
Well, it's politics time again.